All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for this Maximising Member Value webinar event. This will be a show and share style event, but I want to kind of give you the opportunity, sharing screen now, of understanding what's coming up. Unfortunately, we're right at the back of the program on screen at the moment, and I'll take you to the front of the program. Today we're going to cover the individual benefits to membership and the group benefits or the benefits of being part of a group that is supported by Regen Farmers Mutual. To make this work, I'm going to call on the experience of different members of the mutual. We'll have James talking about project management, Peter talking about emissions calculators, Jack talking about group benefits as she's experienced in the Murray Inland Delta, and Rowan and myself as employees of the mutual. In contemporaneously, we're going to show you how onboarding into the platform works, and you could do that on your own with us, or you could do this as a result of watching this recording. You'll see a step by step. We're also going to look at the opportunity finder, and we've got over $100 million worth of grants and financial opportunities within the platform. And so understanding how to identify opportunities that might be suitable for your land. As mentioned, we're going to dive into the project management section and we're going to call on James Dyack to give his experience as a project manager dealing with farmers in the Southern Tablelands Agricultural Restoration Group. Then Peter's going to talk to his experience. He's been doing work with Regen Farmers Mutual on a traceability grant in the beef supply sector. And he's been part of the Granite to Goulburn landscape impact program. Prior to that, Peter has extensive experience in farm management software, having been the CEO of Maya Grazing. And then Rowan's going to talk to the verification of credentials. We're going to use emissions verification as an example and how that might be of value to supply chains. But we do see a world where, verified credentials around animal welfare, sustainability generally, certainly carbon emissions, impacts on biodiversity are going to be increasing. And then we're going to talk to the group benefits. We would love to share with you the software, the digital platform that's supporting our members. And Jack is going to talk to Murray Inland Delta and how that works. Last but not least, we're going to talk more specifically about the Landscape Impact Program, the versions of that which are available for existing organisations or organisations that have some capacity locally, what the program looks like, how it works, and why it's of value. And then we should be all, able to talk by 8 o'clock. And having shared quite a few experiences across a number of us. So, a quick show of hands if you can. Who would like to be doing an onboarding for their own farm contemporaneously? If you are, you may need support. So, is anybody wanting to do this now, or are you happy just to watch as I, do up a dummy data? All right, we might be doing dummy data. That's okay. The part of the Lynn, perfect. Uh, Part of this is going to be, we're recording it, so it'll be available for others to watch and to do the step by step for how to do the onboarding. For those that have already done, like Lynn, I promise to be quick and maybe I'll draw attention to some benefits and features that you maybe didn't see on the first onboarding, and this might help you get maximized value out of your membership, which is kind of the point of today. All right, so if you go to a new browser and you type in regenfarmersmutual.com, you'll come to our website. It has heaps of, good features. tells our stories. It tells, what we're doing with various groups and with various enterprises. There's a whole bunch of videos, inspirational stuff. But to get to the heart of it, you'll want to sign up. Now, when you're asked to sign up, you'll need to enter in a name and a mobile number and agree to the terms and conditions for some reason. I'm just gonna give myself Andrew plus um who's off? Stephen Todd, give me a number between 11 and 51. Come off mute.
47.
47.
So I was on mute because Samsung have recently updated their bloody operation system on their phone and I can't find the bloody mute on my bloody phone now.
Well, I appreciate that. Okay, so we're going to sign up. Now you use your email address. Clearly, I'm using a dummy email address, but that will then, as a user, bring you to a big green button. Now, if you want, there is guidance as to a step by step about how to do your onboarding. And this can help you if you need FAQs. This is a pretty comprehensive FAQ. But press the big green button and select the state that you're operating in. So I'm going to use Test Farm as the name of my farm. And I'm going to use my place here on the Central Coast. Uh, 'Cause and property identification code or PIC is optional. If you've got it, that's great. And then we're going to continue to farm boundaries. Now, what I'm doing here is I've enabled a twin to be created within the Regen digital platform. And now I'm customizing, well, what is that going to be a reflection of? And we are reflecting a land-based activity. So I'm going to put in my address here. I actually need to minimize you for a second. Uh, Lisarow. And when I do that, it loads the cadastral boundaries for the property and enables me to select the lots and DPs that are associated with my property. So if I was a farm, I might have one or I might have 20 or more lot and DPs. The complexity is you probably want to select these at this point. And then we have the opportunity of telling and customizing our twin by talking to our AI. Now, what the insight was is that you can ask people questions and get them to type in, we produce beef. Oh, sorry, not beef, beef on grass and some goats. We also run 50 guinea pigs. I wish I was joking, but that's true. Um, uh, what projects have you completed in the past? What are the goals for the future? What are your current challenges? What farming practices are you proud of? Sustainability initiatives. But we found that like many farmers just don't want to sit and type. That's not their natural way of being. But if you get a farmer talking about their farm, they can talk all day long about their farm. And so there is this opportunity instead of typing to chat with Greg. Now, Greg stands for Geospatial Reasoning Engine, and that's what's driving at the back end the Regen Digital platform. So if you agree to talk with Greg, uh, he will come through your speakers and he'll ask you questions.
Hi, Wardy Test. I'm Greg. I'm here to learn more about Test Farm. To get started, could you tell me a little bit about your farm?
Now,
I'd love
you
to know.
may not be able to hear, but Greg was talking to me at that point, and I doubt that
Oh,
you.
we could hear Woody.
You could. Oh, great. Well, we can keep going with Greg, but Greg is a AI whose job is to ask you questions and to let you riff. As you speak to him, it gives he's not a real person, he's a large language model. He's working out what it is that are going to be priorities to you. Now, that's important because the place where you're landed when you arrive within your Regen digital platform is the opportunity finder. This is otherwise known as the discover. Now, in order to access all of the opportunities, you need to have full membership. So I'm going to take you through how to do that right now. So press on get membership and you can upgrade. Now, when you go to upgrade as an existing member, which you guys pretty much all are, you insert a promotion code and press apply, and that will reduce the price from the original $480 to $0. That will also enable you to enter in your credit card information. Now, I'm just going to stop sharing while I quickly do that piece. And I'm going to invite you guys while I work in the background to go to the next stage uh, to put any questions that you've got in the chat, and
Just
I'll cover them.
what it might be worthwhile noting that like the only things that are currently not visible to non-members are the complete list of the opportunities, um, what you just saw on the screen that Wardy will be taking us back to, and access to the Guru Space. And the Guru Space is our community platform, which sits as separate to what you're seeing on here with respect to your digital twin. But it's our community platform where people can share either knowledge with each other or ask questions of experts within our network. So, folk like Christoph Burr, who, if you've got a question on carbon, if you were asked a question in that space, he would respond to it. So they're the only two places currently where membership, membership of the platform. So the idea is we're building this. We'll be looking to build additional functionality that may be behind the paywall later on.
Thanks, Ron. So I'm going to bring us back. Once you've entered in your credit card details, which may be for $7, you're brought back to a map of your farm after the membership. We'll actually go back to Discover, which was looking at the landscape interventions. Now, when you look at your farm, it will consist of multiple land management units. And to start thinking through land management units, you might look at things like, well, what are your water bodies, your creeks and your dams and your streams and your rivers? What are the riparian zones, those things that border creeks, dams, streams, rivers? What are the productive areas? Are they separated into different enterprises, cropping or grazing, for example? Are there horticultural areas? You might break up into areas based on, forested area or sparse wooded area or fully cleared area. These land management units, they will have interventions that you can make. And sometimes they might be planting a tree, or they might be related to water, or they might be related to control, or they might be related to the inputs that you use. In every case, there aren't unlimited things that you can do with the land management unit. You can generally light a match, stick up a fence, go for a walk with a rifle, plant a tree, take out a tree, those sorts of things, apply grazing or not apply grazing. And to understand your farm and what's available to you, you might be interested, for example, in the construction of leaky weirs for erosion and carbon control. This will show you cost benefits, case studies, if there are so, and opportunities to financing that particular intervention. Let's say you're interested in planting trees or you were interested in carbon, oh, I can't spell carbon, then you might be able to go, okay, well, I can plant mangroves in the blue carbon, or I could implement cool burns to cycle carbon and improve health, or I could plant trees to inset carbon. All of these will show you the relevance based on what you talked to Greg about. And if you're, say, planting trees, you might, pardon me, I'll just that one, planting trees. You might be establishing a forestry area. You might be doing riparian buffers. You might be doing environmental planting with the idea of being open woodlands. Um, Potentially, you want to be doing environmental plantings that enable you to like see something that's highly relevant to you. So for me, based on where I am, the featured opportunity is around environmental plantings that can earn ACCUs. And so if I wanted to look at establishing an ERF project, let's see where that was. I'll use the open woodlands one. Then what it will tell me is the step by step and the funding opportunities. Those funding opportunities might cover things like where are they relevant, because some of our funding is state-based. It'll tell you the eligibility criteria, the potential benefits of engaging with that, and then take you off the site to enable you to access that particular opportunity. Now, I tell you all of these things because the opportunities and interventions, the interventions are being developed as we work with more and more landscape impact programs. And the opportunities are an ever-growing feast. We're drawing from supply chains, environmental markets, local economy opportunities, and philanthropic and government grants. Last thing I want to show you before handing over to James, who will give you a good idea of the projects, is how you can use your digital map and your digital twin. So there are farm management softwares. If you're a grain grower, you've probably got John Deere or Case software to enable you to do variable rates and to do, digitally supported agriculture. If you're a grazier, you might have Maya or Mobile or AgriWeb to help you manage your graze plants. But there's no software to our knowledge that helps you manage biodiversity or hydrology or carbon projects. And that's where the mutual has a particular advantage. But one of the keys is being able to control your data. So, and your areas of interest. So I can add areas of interest to my property. And in doing so, I could say, oh, actually, I want to look at this, my cleared area, and draw a polygon, and I can give that a name and a description of what I'm looking for. There are some basic tools like visualizing a centroid that enables you to go, okay, well, if I move that polygon, what happens to the centroid? Now I can visualize any layer on the map and I can take it away. As you get more sophisticated with each of your land management units, you'll end up having a whole series of areas that represent each land management unit. We also have some things like digital terrain models, which are installed, and you can make them viewable or not by creating the eye. If you create an area that's of interest to you, you can also download that area into your GIS or into any software that you might be using, like Planner, in order to help you understand the benefits and the opportunities that are present on any particular land management unit. Now, in addition to being able to identify areas, you can also locate photographic points or areas of interest by security regional areas or any particular thing that you want to put on there. I'm just choosing a random file by means of showing you an example. And then that file now exists in your file system. If you get a document, a PDF or something like that. Just see what else I've got. My downloads, a CSV of your native wildlife, your protected matters search tool. You can upload that. And this collection of data becomes your data store, a digital representation of your real world farm or land asset. Okay, so at this point, we've not covered a bunch of the left-hand column. We're now going to hand over to James Dyack. James is the Regen advisor in the Southern Tablelands region of New South Wales. He's relatively new to Regen Farmers Mutual, but he's been picking up project management and has some lessons to share. So over to you, James.
Hello, everybody. I'm just going to share my screen just to show you exactly where this is. And I'm not sure if you are actually, I don't think that's the correct screen. So I'm going to choose again that one there. And I think you're now seeing the correct screen in the, is that right?
Yeah, we're seeing local example. Thanks, mate.
So if you want to find the project management function inside the platform, you need to go to the Grow section and choose a project. In here are all the different projects. You can see 2 of the projects are actually live. I've started a project for each of those. I'm going to look at the woodland design project that I've started. And you can see that there's an option here to manage the project advisors. So if you have a Regen advisor who's working with you, you can invite them. I've invited myself there to work with me. And also for each of the steps in the process that have been outlined here, you can see where you're up to. It's very helpful to understand where you are in the process when you're working with somebody or understanding what it is. So as you go along, you can see I've ticked this button. If I untick it, it goes back to black. I say yes. I've read that piece of information. I'm comfortable with that step. I'm moving on to the next step. Another key important function here is that all of the project files, any files that have been uploaded, are all stored in one place. And when you're doing project management, having one definitive version when you're collaborating with others is very important. So this provides a place to have the one definitive current version of the file. You can see here, this is version 1 of this file. And you can upload these files from over here, but also where there's a file required for the process, you can actually see and upload that file as part of this step here. So you can see for this one, it's necessary to have a map. So I've uploaded the file. I can also download the file from here, or I can replace the file. Just looking at my notes. Another key function here is to be able to see any reference information. So if we look, for example, at section 2.2, learn how an environmental planting project works. There's a summary here. All this text here is a summary, easy to read, easily accessible. But if you want to get a better understanding, you can go and check out the actual guidance for the method, which can be a good idea. So now we're looking at the government's guidance, and we can see a bunch of different pieces of information. Say, for example, we want to understand what record keeping is actually required. So we can click on here and show, and we're looking at the government source. If we go back to within the platform, there's another function here where the geospatial reasoning engine, or Greg, the chat bot, is available, and we can ask it some questions. So I've already been asking some questions here, and I asked it, what are the monitoring requirements for an environmental planting? And it's given me these answers. So it says here, projects must be monitored to ensure that they're compliant with Part 3. Information must be collected to demonstrate compliance with specific calibrations, etc., and so on. And then I went on to say, well, what do I need for a planting plan? In the same way that we might use any form of intelligence, artificial intelligence, any reasoning engine there, we're looking at the answers and we're deciding what our next question is. So that's kind of what I wanted to run through just briefly. Does anybody have any questions on that right now?
James, can you just run through how you got into those questions? I've got it open on my screen as well, but I couldn't see how you got those questions on the right.
Yeah, no worries, Chris. So if you go all the way down to the bottom right-hand side, and I'm not sure if you can see, I'm circling it on my screen. There's like a little speech bubble. If you click the speech bubble, up comes the geospatial reasoning engine, and you can type your message in here. So you can type something like, what do I need for a planting plan? And it thinks about it, and it's going to give me a response. So now it's thinking about it. Did that help you find it, Chris? Did you manage to find where it is?
No, I can't scroll down to get that little chat question icon.
Oh, right. Well, it might be if your screen's not maximized, it's hard to see. So if it's already up there for me, but are you in the...
Go to the environmental plantings project, Chris Hibbert, and I know Greg sits there happily. And then when you move between another project, he's still there. But sometimes if you start with a project like the beef in setting, for some reason Greg's lazy and he only turns up on one.
Yeah, so let's just talk about. So it's a large language model that's been trained on using the government's environmental plantings and methodology and the Carbon Farming Act. So it's been educated currently with respect to environmental plantings only. So you can ask questions with respect to environmental plantings. We haven't trained it on the beef in setting because we're just still developing the beef in setting as a project. So that's the reason why, and why Greg is supposed to only appear on the environmental plantings and the woodland design. The woodland design project is a kind of a subset of environmental plantings. That's a particular type of environmental planting that can be done on boxgum grassy woodlands, basically. So, Chris, that might explain. So if you go into beef in setting, it shouldn't appear. But as with all things on our current platform, we're developing and refining, and this is part of the process of engaging you guys, is to really understand the bits that work and the bits that we really need to invest in to refine.
And it's a good point, Rowan, while we're on the projects page. I guess projects is a relatively new feature. Maybe you'd like to share with people like what projects we anticipate being able to have workflows for, or is there any limit at all to the projects that we have workflows for?
Not yeah. So this, what we've designed is a kind of a generic approach to that enables us to support farmers undertaking projects, environmental projects on their land, either individually and potentially as groups. And so the way it's been designed is to enable the fundamental building blocks to be used to support the project, whatever it is. And it's kind of missing, a key component being we don't have currently dates. So that's a key bit we want to add in, because we want to be able to notify a farmer, who's doing, for example, an environmental plantings project. You know what? It's time to update your fire management plan. So go and update it and upload it to your twin, and then we can send it to the CER. So but we understand this functionality is something that through our co-design the other week, something that works for farmers, that delivers value. And so ultimately the idea is that we can support projects that may be, Landcare might have a project it wants to put up, or there might be a government funding program. You see Victorian Trees on Farms, that's a current government funding program that's just been opened in Victoria. And we're talking to the government saying, look, in order to manage the project, we want to actually minimise the cost for our farmers. We want to make it as efficient as possible, but we also want to, maintain the regulatory, the quality of the reporting. So we've got a mechanism to ensure that, like, our farmers being kind of a project is being pinged saying, oh, it's time to do this. And so there's a mechanism and one place where all the documentation is stored. So we think overall, this type of approach can support projects from wherever they come from. Is that?
Yeah, that's perfect, mate. James, there hasn't been any questions in the chat, but I think it's a really opportune time for either farmer members or potential other advisors to ask questions about how easy, how difficult, what have you learnt from using the project management module? Is there anything you could talk to in terms of, is it easier? Is it more difficult? What have been the challenges of using this with clients? What have been some of the benefits of using this with farmers?
Well, I think one of the key benefits is it outlines all the steps in the process. So it's very easy to see all the components that are required, because with one of these things, with a project, with a situation like this where there's lots of steps and people don't necessarily know what they are, it's helpful to show everybody what's involved, but also you can draw people's attention specifically to the part that you might be working on. And you can say, well, this is the bit that we're up to now. This is the key thing that we need to do. And it means I might explain it one way, but then there's something else that somebody can go and look at and make their own sense of after they've been talking with me. And they can come back to me and say, you said this, and then on here I see that it says this. What does that really mean? And we can have a conversation about it. But also the capacity to upload files and share the files is very helpful as well. So, I know myself, sometimes somebody emails me something, sometimes I lose it or I save it in the wrong place, or, this is one place you can go and you go, oh, well, that's where the latest version of the thing is. That's what I'm up to. It's also a place where we've talked about something, but it didn't make any sense, and the first piece of information is not helpful, I can go somewhere else and get another more in-depth piece of information. So I think those are key functions that are proving to be quite helpful. But like Rowan said, this is under development, and the feedback from the region advisors, the feedback from the farmers is very helpful in refining it to make sure that it's the best that it can be.
Thanks, mate. Any questions from anyone? Otherwise, we might throw the conch from James to Peter and start talking carbon emissions caps.
Can I just ask a question on that? Can you create your own project? Like if you're doing your own self-funded revegetation project, like just to record what you do, what you plant, where you plant it?
Yes and no, Lynn. So we have the file upload system in your collect part of the business, and you could, store all of the documents. But in order for it to appear in the project section, we need a CSV, essentially a spreadsheet that outlines what are the steps that are going to happen over the course of the cycle, the different phases that you go through. Now, if you were to pre-populate what the project will look like and send it to us in the CSV format, well, then we could actually populate a project for you individually.
Okay.
But the place that we're commercially starting from is looking at the projects that we think will have broad adoption, like the beef insetting project or the Victorian trees on farm, because we're hoping that lots of farmers will find those projects immediately beneficial. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
It's a great question, though. Chris, you've got your hand up, off mute.
Yeah, so Andrew, I think that it's great having this list of available projects, and so I've clicked on Victorian Trees on Farm project, and obviously, you go through those. I tried to open up the Notion one, and I have to enter into it, log in, and that's all right. I can create a login, but I think that in our New Futures project, which, as you know, is designed for dairy farmers, a lot of them are going to want to actually try and understand the science behind their interventions. And let's just say we're talking about, planting shelter belts. So the farmers that have already planted shelter belts on farms are doing it because they believe it's the right thing to do. But the next phase of farmers coming along will need to see the science behind it. And they're going to want to say, okay, so if I plant these are going to be the positive impacts on my landscape. And this is on an individual farmer basis. If they're along a waterway, it could, collectively add to the broader landscape. But how do we make sure that when they click on these, as we know, Tom's going through in our project and getting all these farmers up to speed here. But if they really want to say, well, how do I know 5 or 10% of my farm in shelter belts is going to really be beneficial to my enterprise? At this stage, we're not offering them a carrot to do it, but we're trying to convince them that it's worth doing.
So the question in there, Chris, can I just check in with you? Is the question, how do we set up projects with incentives? Or could you restate the question?
Probably this is all about providing information for them. So they want to see, okay, what is the benefit for me if I put this, shelter belting on my farm or protect this riparian zone or whatever.
Actually, do you recall at the start with the opportunity finder that if there's an intervention they want to do, plant trees or put in a buffer zone or create a windbreak, I'd like to think that they could discover that opportunity or that intervention. And based on the intervention that they're interested in, it should show them the currently available financing opportunities. Now, if they choose a financing opportunity like environmental plantings or Victorian trees on farm, we have the project management step by step to help them. If they're choosing an opportunity that maybe doesn't yet have project management, there's usually in each of them a consistent description of cost benefit analysis, previous case studies, those sorts of things that they can access. Now, they won't always be perfect for what people want, but it's a good place to kick off if you're coming from a low base. It's also probably worth at this point kind of describing the difference between commercial support and technical support that a regen advisor can provide to a member or any consultant. We just call them regen advisors, right? But a consultant who's bought into a project might be there because they understand that particular region, they're local to that region, they understand the particular intervention type, and they're going to help that farmer work out the cost benefit and the financial impact of that opportunity, right? And we actually need commercial advisory all across, Australia ultimately through regen advisors that can use platform and understand the cost benefit and the trade-offs. And then there are technical advisors. So these are experts in GIS or experts in ecology or in a particular field. And we want to be able to provide what we call those back of house or technical experts and front of house commercial experts as resources that I, as a farmer, through that project, can invite James in for commercial support. But I could equally invite in an ecologist to provide me the seed selection or technical support that might be beyond a front of house person, or may be specialized skills like GIS mapping, or require specialized software like full cam forward abatement estimates. And so the opportunity, it's very narrow at this moment because we've got so few regen advisors. They haven't really stratified into commercial and technical yet. But the opportunity for me as a farmer will be find out what the intervention is and be able to identify and invite the sort of regen advisor that can give me contextual commercial advice or technical services that I need in order to actually take advantage of an opportunity. Does that help, Chris?
Yes, that was an excellent answer. You covered a lot more than the question, but that was great. And I think that we probably really do need, we're very evidence-based in the dairy industry when we do things. And I think, perhaps what we may be able to do too is when we come across a lot of, projects that have had assessments done on their benefits, in our region, that we can send them to you guys and you can post them in there as resources available for other users.
That is bang on. So the idea is these interventions and opportunities have grown with each landscape impact program. So you might have noticed on the screen share there was a lot about ash and mill mud, which is great if you're a Herbert River or a cane grower. But if you're a Victorian dairy farmer, you're not really using ash and mill mud, right? But we're learning these interventions and identifying local opportunities and able to pretty quickly populate and it's zero cost to do so, to add them into the platform. So we're excited by that. Anybody else with some questions?
Just on, so Chris, if there's any, well, anyone, if you view the project management modules not necessarily as fixed, Victorian Trees on Farms, for example, if you think there's a gap, like it would be useful if we had some sort of resource in there to explain that that's valuable, because then we can go, right, well, let's find the resource and add that as a step, so that like if for those that want to, they can click on that and go and see that resource. Because unless we know that that's a need, we won't know to put it in.
Perfect. James, I might get you to stop sharing and we'll pass the conch to Peter. Peter, are you there? Have we lost you on the internet? Ah, there you are.
No, I'm still here.
Excellent.
Can you hear me okay?
We can. James, do you want to stop sharing?
I'm just trying to find out how to do that. Look, says that I'm not.
That's all right. That's all right. Don't worry, I can do it. I can do it from here. I've got the power. And I think I've done it.
Yes, we have.
I'm hoping you can see screen that says carbon emissions report.
Might be just a bit. Yep, coming up now. Thanks.
This is Australia's modern satellite technology at work. Okay, is that come through? Is it going to work?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, so I guess the context for this is I've been helping a whole bunch of members do their carbon emissions calculations as part of a project that's looking at creating some verified credentials from those emissions reports with a view to working out how we can value those credentials in the supply chain. And Ron's going to be talking about that to some extent a bit later on. But as a byproduct, I've sort of got to use the tool and done a whole lot of emissions calculations for a whole lot of different farms. I'm just going to sort of give you a bit of an idea of what it's like to use the tool to do your emissions calculations. And I would point out that there's nothing particularly magical or special about being able to calculate emissions. There's lots of tools and spreadsheets that can do it for you. What's more interesting is what you then do with an emissions report and the sorts of things that RFM is talking about in terms of creating these sorts of verified credentials and then providing these unlocking value through the supply chain is what's really exciting about the emissions reports in the first place. And I guess the other element of it is it's really nice to be able to have your emissions reports all in one place in the context with all of the other projects that you might be doing around improving your landscape. What I'll do is I'll go into one that I baked before, and I'll just dive into a hypothetical beef operation. And so has that refreshed to show you a list of attributes of a beef business, livestock inventory, environment, and so forth?
Not yet, mate. We're still looking at
coming through.
It's come through now. Thank you.
Gosh, I'm going to have to go really. It's terrible, isn't it? Okay, so what you can see here is a list of all the different elements that are assessed as part of calculating your carbon emissions. So obviously the amount of livestock that you have, yes, your current inventory and any purchases and sales of livestock has a big bearing, and as you'll see later on, a sort of dominant bearing on your emissions if you're a beef producer. Similarly, the environment that you're working within, the rainfall area that you're in, has an impact. The type of inputs you're using in terms of fertiliser and so forth. The type of energy you're using, the amount of energy that you're using will affect your emissions profile, and any feed and minerals that you're adding. So I wanted to go through each of those in turn with some simple examples and then show you what the calculation looks like in the end, with a view to, I guess, inviting you to kind of do it for yourself, because it's pretty easy. So I'll start with the hardest thing of all, which is livestock inventory. And when we dive into livestock inventory, and I wait for the screen to update, so when that sort of starts appearing, the other end of the internet.
I'll let you know as soon as it's there. It's there now. Thank you.
Right. Okay. So here is a made up, simple breeding business. So you can see in my inventory here, I've got 2 bulls that I bought sometime at the beginning of spring and carried all the way through for the rest of the year. I've got 200 cows that I'm holding throughout the whole year, season by season. I'm calving off in spring from those cows 98 steer calves and 98 heifer calves. And I'm carrying those steers and heifers through and selling them at the end of autumn. That's kind of the business I'm talking about here. And so all you need to do is enter in the nature of that livestock inventory. So by way of example, if I go and look at the cows, eventually you will now see a screen that shows a little bit more detail about just the cows in my inventory. So you can see saying for each season I'm carrying the 200 cows. They're 600 kilograms in live weight. The amount of live weight is important because that determines the emissions profile of each of the animals. I also need to put in their live weight gains because that affects the emissions profile as well. In this case, the calves are just I'm just assuming I'm just maintaining the same weight on the calves, so there's no live weight gain. And I've got to put in a calving percentage because, again, that affects the emissions profile. I'm assuming I get 9% calving. So that my cows, if I close out of that and open up just by way of example, the steers that are going to be born in spring, you will eventually see my record for steers come up. Does that come up yet?
Not yet, but it's on its way. We can see it's got about a 10-second latency.
Like having one of those. Remember when we used to have international calls back when we used to talk about STD and ISD calls on the telephone network, and when it went over when you went international, you had the satellite delay, you had to hang around waiting for the answers to come back. Anyway,
Okay.
back now. So hopefully now you can see the steers. So these are the steers that were calved in spring. So there were 98 that appeared in spring. We carried them through to the end of autumn and sold them at the end of autumn. And so the average number of autumn is half, roughly half, because I started with 98 at the start of autumn and at the end of autumn I had 0. So on average there were 50 steers there. And you'll see here that they're gaining weight. I'm assuming that they're gaining about a kilo a day through spring, summer, autumn. And so they've gone from about 100 in spring to 200 to 300, for example. So that just gives you a bit of an idea about the profile for steers and similarly for the heifer calves. So in that sort of a manner, I can go and put in all of the elements of my livestock inventory. I also need to take account of purchases and sales. Purchases are particularly critical because in this case, I'm saying I've bought in 2 bulls at about 900 kilos. That will have implications on my emissions profile because if I buy those 2 bulls, I'm effectively buying the emissions that were used, that were emitted to create those bulls through the life of their bulls up to this point in time, and that has to be counted in my emissions as well. And you'll see down the bottom of the screen that I'm selling off all 98 heifer calves and all 98 steer calves at a particular live weight. So that's pretty all I have to do for the livestock. It'll then go and be able to go and calculate all of the associated emissions that have come from those livestock. I might just stop here and if anyone's got any questions about the livestock element. No? Excellent.
Thank you. Good, mate.
I did have one I put in the chat. Sorry, Peter. I had a question in the chat about dairy cows.
I haven't got a small screen. Can't see. Yep. What about them?
Dairy is a different calculator to the one that's on screen at the moment. But I think dairy cows, in terms of the inventory, is now reflecting the way that beef did. Whereas when we did our first run through, Chris, I think with Tom, the entry for dairy was far more individual livestock unit. And now it looks a lot more like beef, to my understanding.
I mean, the calculations will be more or less the same. It's just that the way that the dairy enterprise is run is quite different in terms of inputs and so forth. So you just have to take account of all of that. But at the end of the day, you've got cows, you've got feed, you've either got weight gain or not. You're turning out in the case of dairy, obviously you're turning out the milk as well. You just need to account for all of those things. It all goes in. There's a calculator that does it all. It's pretty not dissimilar to what we've just done, but it has some extra stuff in it for dairy.
Sorry, it's Barry here. Can I just ask a quick question? A 600 plus kilo dairy cow eating beautiful, ryegrass down in Gippsland, compared to a 400 kilo Brahman eating dry Mitchell grass or buffel. Surely there's a difference in carbon output emissions.
Yes. For the purposes of these calculations and the models that are being used, if it was the same kind of animal at the same weight with the same weight gain, it's kind of assumed that it's getting the same feed profile, and so the model will model out the emissions for that animal. If that makes sense.
The screen that you've got up at the moment, Peter, shows the state and the northern versus southern production systems and the rainfalls, and so that helps. The calculator, Barry, its inputs are on our digital front end, like what Peter is populating. but the factors for what weight gain equals what emission or what per kilo equals what emissions, they're held by an organization called the Ag Innovation Australia, or AIA. Now, it was funded by the MLA and the Grains RDC and the Cotton RDC. All of the RDCs put their money into AIA to be a place that holds each industry's carbon calculator. So, as the scientists in an industry learn about different emissions factors or different breed values, etc., they get updated in the back end. And so we get asked, where are you in the world? How many livestock do you have? And most farmers can answer those questions. But it's the scientists in the back end at AIA, people like Richard Eckhart and um, his ilk, that are actually determining the emissions factors that produce the emissions calculation. So we're kind of black boxing it into the data set and don't have control over whether it says it's 1.3 or 1.4 as an emissions factor. The only thing we can control is accurate inputs of the use of fertilizer, the location, the number of livestock, etc. Back to
Okay.
you.
Yep. That's fair enough. Thank you.
Yeah, it's important. Yeah, so the actual underlying modelling, it's actually quite heavily regulated. So it's the same model that's used to do the national accounts for carbon emissions at a country level. It's the same model that's used through the various carbon projects that are come under the Emission Reductions Fund, and all the other regulatory bodies. When they calculate emissions, they all use the same set of models. So they're not our models or RFM's models. They're the regulated models, if that makes sense. So just to finish off, we need to account for a few other things apart from livestock, though. We need to account for fertilizer. In this sort of made-up property, I'm assuming that it's a sort of a low-input regen business, so it's not actually, in this case, not need to put on urea or phosphate. So I've just put 0 in, but if you have any of those inputs get put in here and enable their values in the model. We need to take account of energy usage. So if I explode into energy usage, we can pop in how much diesel and petrol is being used, and also what electricity is being used. That also contributes to your emissions. We need to distinguish between whether the electricity is coming from the grid or from a renewable source, and if it's from a renewable source, what proportion of the energy came from a renewable source. All that gets taken into account to work out the emissions associated with that electricity consumption. In this case, I'm assuming that this property is off-grid, so it's 100% renewable and therefore 0 emissions from the electricity, let's just say. We need to take account of any feed that has been brought into the property. So the feed screen will gradually appear. I'll just talk to it while it's appearing for you. So we need to account for any grain or hay that we've purchased. In this case, I'm assuming I bought 20 tonnes of hay, let's say. Any particular herbicides that might have been applied. In this case, I'm assuming this business doesn't use herbicides, so there's 0. Any lime that's been laid down and the type of lime, whether it's a sort of a heavily diluted lime or a pure limestone. In this case, I'm assuming it's just straight lime. Whether you're using any mineral blocks, mineral licks, winner blocks, and so forth. In this case, I've just popped down a half a tonne of a mineral lick, but with no urea content. So you just need to sort of account for all of the various inputs and licks and so forth that you've been using. And once you've done all of that, and I've put 0 for most of the others because it doesn't matter too much. Once we've done all of that and entered all that data into the tool, we can click this button at the bottom, which I'm hoping you can see, this green button that says Get Carbon Calculation. Has that appeared for you yet?
It's coming.
Vague nods.
It's coming, mate.
It is painful doing this on a link, but sorry about that. I'll click that button, and what will happen is that we will get a report of the emissions profile for particular property. And this is probably going to take another 10 seconds before it appears. Basically, what the report, I won't talk too much, but what the report basically shows is on the right-hand side, a pie chart that shows your scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. So scope 1 emissions are the emissions that resulted from activities that occurred on farm directly. And in the case of a beef enterprise, that's pretty much predominantly the methane emissions from cattle stock. Scope 2 emissions, which are emissions that would have arisen as a result of electricity use. In this case, the scope 2 emissions would be 0 because we would just run the whole thing off solids. And the scope 3 emissions, which are emissions that are the result of off-farm inputs, such as buying in livestock or feed, for example. And you can see there's a small amount of scope 3 emissions. Has that pie chart appeared for you yet?
Yes, it has.
Great, thank you. And the idea is that the tool can let you drill in to have a look at, for example, a little spiderweb chart there that shows that the dominant form of all the emissions in my profile here is the enteric emissions from the livestock. But it could be that there are other, depending on the nature of my business, I might have a greater amount of emissions from feed or herbicides or fertilizer or whatever. In the particular business I just went through, it's pretty much totally dominated by the enteric emissions of the animals. And you can drill down a bit further through the scope 2, 3 emissions. I won't drop them down at the moment because the lag is so bad, to look at what is the breakdown of my scope 1 emissions, that is the emissions that happened on farm. What's the breakdown of my scope 3 emissions, that is the emissions of stuff that I bought in. And I can do some what if analysis by then going back, maybe changing around some values and having a look at how that affects my emissions. And the idea is that once I've got all of this, I can sort of close the books at the end of the financial year, just like I do a tax return, generate an emissions report, and hopefully at some point in time in the future, use that emissions report as a set of credentials for helping me to get a better price with my processor, or opening the gate to deals that I mightn't otherwise have had, or being rewarded because I managed to reduce my emissions by 5% or whatever it might be. Does that make sense?
That's perfect, Peter. Thank you.
Any questions?
Save you from the screen share and come off screen share. And anybody got questions on emissions?
Yep.
I have a question. Are you able to link your carbon emissions report to an inset project to give a net carbon balance?
That's part of the goal of the next little while. We've got a beef insetting program that we're conceptualizing at the moment to enable that. There is basically calculations at the moment using GAF that enable you to account for prior plantings, but there isn't yet things like reductions through what's it called, like supplements, seaweed, etc., or sequestrations from new plantings that you're just putting in that you might want to credit to today's emissions report. So we're working on that, Andrea. I think it's a focus area for the beef industry. Beef and dairy feel it the hardest because of the enteric emissions. The photosynthetic industries of like cane and grains and cotton and stuff, most of their emissions aren't scope 1. They're buying them in scope 3 emissions in terms of bag N and things. So the pain's definitely felt with the livestock producers first. and getting them to be able to show not just the emissions, but also the sequestrations. So it's a more accurate cyclical picture. That's part of the challenge that we've got to overcome as an industry. Yeah. All right, Rowan, give you a quick opportunity.
Just to add to that, so the idea is that if you've got some verified emissions and it covers off all of the things that Wardy was just mentioning, then there's a whole lot of different ways that you could use that reporting. You could use it for an insetting program. You could use it for as part of an offsetting report. You could use it as part of a supply shed agreement that's rewarding for lowered intensity. So there's a variety of ways that this becomes like a building block that can be used for a whole bunch of things. Is the idea? Yeah.
It's a good segue question though, Andrea, because I just share screen, so I'm going to basically leave off from where Peter was. And so here's your emissions claim with, it's the same, it's a beef producer, so it's got the same thing about, you've got your carbon emissions, nitrogen, methane. So it's the same carbon report, but the missing piece of the puzzle, if you like, so if you can imagine what we've done so far is we've got a platform that helps farmers understand the opportunities that might be available on their farm. Then we have a tool to help them manage the projects that they might choose to enter into. So if there is an opportunity they want to take up, we want to have a project management tool that helps them to manage that project so they can deliver into it in a cost efficient and effective manner. And then the missing piece is how can we maximize the value of the outcome, those environmental outcomes for our members. And a key component to that is we need to be able to help our members deliver high credibility outcomes that the buyers want. All right. So there's an assumption that there's someone who's wanting to pay, and the person who's wanting to pay is after like a high credibility outcome. So they don't want any greenwashing risk associated with it. And so what we're looking to do is, you would have seen at the top of the screen previously on Peter's, there was a button up here saying submit for verification. And so this is what appears after a claim's been verified. Now, we're still trying to understand what evidence we need to support a verified claim, and it obviously changes by industry. But on the assumption that we've received the NVT and the fuel receipts or whatever it is that we need to verify the data that's gone in to support the claim, a farmer that can then get a verified credential. And so that's what this icon then changes to green. And what that does is it then enables the issuance of a verified claim, a verified credential. And we've been working with the team building what's called the United Nations Transparency Protocol. Okay, and so the United Nations Transparency Protocol, as the name suggests, it's being driven out of the United Nations. So it's designed to create a global common language that's industry agnostic, that's region agnostic, to enable us to communicate and share data with respect to, or share claims with respect to supply chains in particular. And so you can think of it, it's a protocol, it's not a technology. So what it describes is this common language in the same way that, like our emails, we can send an email from a Mac to a Microsoft, and most of the time they come through and you can read them, and they come through in a format that they were sent, and that's because there's a protocol underlying that email exchange, TCP/IP. And so that's what that is being designed here, a protocol to enable the sharing of these credentials. And what it does is enables the sharing of data in a way that the claim can be used as a verified credential. So what we have here is what it relates to. This is a whole of farm carbon emissions attestation. It relates to test farm, a well-used farmer. It's issued by Regen Digital, and this is the period it's valid from to, and there you can see the carbon emissions. So you've got scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. To answer your question, Andrea, we do, in this example, we have the sequestration that's gone on farm. that can be included in the net farm emissions within the verified credential. So the idea here is that these claims clearly enable the management of mitigation of any greenwashing risks because they're verified, and this talks to a key role of the mutual. That if you look at carbon markets, for example, the auditing process, the compliance process is very expensive and cumbersome, and not necessarily delivering the outcomes that we're looking for out of our regulated projects. A better approach that has been shown to be consistent with the way humans work is to use member-owned organisations or the commons, so to speak. So a mutual is an ideal vehicle for verifying its members' claims. And the reason for that is that if you've got 100 people, 100 members who are issuing verified claims and they have value, and one person's doing the wrong thing, it affects the other 99, and because it undermines the value of their claims. So there's a naturally reinforcing mechanism within a member-owned organisation that will tell those 99 to bring that one person back into a line, so they're either doing the right thing or that one person's kicked out. And that's the way that Eleanor Ostrom won a Nobel Prize for this work back in the 70s. That's the way cooperatives and mutuals work. This process has been used by CBH in the West. So they issue credentials under the ICC for exporting canola to Germany. So Germany needs. And so it's recognised that a mutual is a good vehicle for verifying claims. And so this is important because what we're looking to do is to find ways that we can help our members to deliver verified claims at the lowest cost possible. We can talk to, well, this is probably a good point to segue to the group benefits, because what we're looking to do is to now understand how we can engage with supply chains, financials, other types of buyers, governments, to be able to say, well, if we're able to deliver verified claims in this manner, what claims are important to you, as in what outcomes are important to you, and how can we exchange value for that? How can we maximise that value for our members? And so that's, for example, the intent of our session on Friday around beef insetting is to explore how we can go about insetting in the beef supply chain and get our members compensated. Oh, what I should have said is that claim, what you saw there was a human readable version. It is machine readable. So these things can exist. There's a link that if you're authorized, you can access. So you can hide data if you so choose. But that link is to a claim that is also machine readable. So what it creates is a mechanism for our machines, our computers, our supply chains, our financial institutions to be able to consume these claims en masse and be able to report on as whatever their ESG reporting requires.
Thank you, Rowan. So everybody, I'm going to read the room a little and think we've gone now an hour 20 without a break. We've been talked at the whole time. I'm going to ask you to drop into the chat what feature of the digital platform. Is it the opportunity finder? Maybe the ability to have a map and add photos or files to your digital twin. Maybe it's the carbon emissions calculator. Maybe it's project management. Out of the features that you've seen in the platform, if you could just put into the chat what features are most appealing to you and why. I'll give you a minute to do that. While you're doing that, if anybody needs a toilet break, go take your toilet break. And then we're going to be back at 7:23 and into the content. Does that sound okay? Barry, opportunity finder, Chris, projects that may be available. Great. Hey, ability to store monitoring photos.
Hey, it's Barry again. While we're just shooting the breeze, can I just go back 5 minutes to the emissions calculator?
Yep.
Talking about feral animals, and in some periods, particularly drought, ferals may be non-trivial contributors. I'm thinking kangaroos, goats, pigs. I mean, feral cats, we've got thousands of them at the moment, but they're relatively small. Are they need to be included, or are they as specifically excluded?
They're specifically excluded, but your impact on the environment versus the way that scientists calculate carbon emissions, it's a totally different thing, right?
We're trying our best,
Yeah.
except for the roos, of course.
Yeah. I mean, oh, I'd love to have a rant, but this isn't the scene for it. But the scientists need to understand that these things are cycle. If you've got photosynthesis that produces cellulose, that cellulose can be either digested through a ruminant or it can oxidize slowly or oxidize rapidly through combustion. But it has to cycle once it's created photosynthetically. And cattle eat 10,000 plants. So they're the equivalent in their ruminant of burning those 10,000 plants in a rapid oxidization event. But you have to have that cycle. At least with farming, you have the opportunity of improving biodiversity, water holding capacity, producing food and fiber, and all of the soil fertility benefits of that. But you can't grow a plant into cellulose without having it cycle through oxidation, slow, fast, or rumination. Has to happen. But at the moment, the way that the world works is they think that ruminants are a one-way impact on the environment. And, you know, uh, we're not here to fight the scientists today. We're here to work out our commercial and practical steps forward. So that was me not ranting. So wait till you get me on a real rant. Thank you everybody for your input. What we're going to do now, we're about a bit over halfway, and I really want to talk to one of the other features that you will have seen on our uh, program, landscape groups. Oh, we've got double query space there for some reason. Now we have several landscape groups. If I was to go into the Southern Tablelands, I can see who the members of the group are, and this is going to be an improved process over time. So community page on our platform, we'll soon have community projects and soon have community opportunity finders, and we may even be able to invite resources like the equivalent of a regen advisor being invited to a project. There might be suppliers or local organizations that can be invited into community projects. And so we will continue to develop community. But I wanted to make the point that we aim to support our individual farmers, but the thing that we've heard time and again when we started co-design in 2021, 2020, right through to a fortnight ago when we held our, turning support into value, that people really value the ability to work as a community to achieve an economically and environmentally material impact. And that gives them this empowerment, this enablement around their power to buy and their power to sell. And in a lot of cases, the mutual is an ideal structure because we're democratically owned to provide auspicing or to provide support to on the ground existing organizations that might be community or member or industry owned in a specific location. So our role we see is definitely supporting individual members, but it's also about economically enabling groups to come together to achieve economic and environmental outcomes that no individual can do. Now, you know this shit is real because you know that a biodiversity island, no matter how pristine, if not connected to other parts of biodiversity, you don't get the 1+1 = 3 synergy. You know that you need scaled effect biodiversity, hydrology, uh, unit costs around economics. So, funnily enough, it's not all about communist hippie woo-woo. It's about the most enlightened economic self-interest for the individual is acting as a group. Now, I'm going to hand over at this point to Jacqueline MacArthur from Wambuta in the Murray Inland Delta region, who'll take us through Murray Inland Delta North and South. Over to you, Jack. Have I made you a co-host, Jack? I hope I have. Yes.
Yeah. Woody, actually, I was thinking, just so we have some graphics and some inspiration, if you wanted to, on our group page for Murray Inland Delta, if you wanted to bring that up.
Certainly.
There's a link to a website that we created for our Murray Inland Delta group.
Yep.
And then if you go to that website and click on our landscape, there's a map and some photos, which might be the background to a couple of stories that I'd like to tell about the Murray Inland Delta and the people of it.
Yep.
Go back to the top menu and just go on our landscape. Yeah, and then just there. Unfortunately, it looks a bit blurry, but you can see the red circle around the Murray Inland Delta there. If you can picture the border, the Murray, and when it goes sharply northwest, that's our inland delta. So both north and south of the Murray River in that area. It's an irrigation district, and there's dryland and dairy. Dryland and irrigated farming, and some rice growing to the north of us. It's a really beautiful part of the world. I think you're showing some of that. There's Ramsar protected wetlands on 3 sides, and this is home to extraordinary, biodiversity where it's existed, where it's still intact. And the main opportunities and challenges of this place are one word: water. That's what it's all about in this place. And so we have been, I guess we could be counted and certainly say that we are some ground zero for some of the worst socioeconomic effects of the water market structure and for water reform. But people no one's going to sit around and die in a ditch. People work out what they're going to do, and what we're going to do is stick together. So what often happens, and what can be a feature of addressing market failure and even addressing emerging markets, is the formation of co-ops or coalitions of farmers to find solutions together and navigate the challenges. So it's been the formation of the Regen Farmers Mutual has been timely for a number of members here. We have 10 members in the north of the Delta and the New South Wales side, and 10 in the south. Soon to be, we're recruiting another 20, another 15 in the north. Quite a bit of this has been assisted by the PPAP grants. So that's been really helpful in being able to do that work of being able to work out what would have multiple benefits for us. So I'd tell 2 stories about it. And in the south, Victoria, they have smaller farms in some of the northern areas. There's some really good dairy farmers in that area, and they have a state that's probably not as well financed as other states at the moment, which is saying it mildly. But this is a story about where the mutual comes in to activate the bush telegraph. So this happened about, a couple of weeks ago, where one of our members rang up and said, "Quick, we've got less than a day to try and access a federal landcare grant for our landcare group. What should we do? Who should we talk to? How do we do that?" And so I suggested that part of that would be expanding the membership and being part of a landscape impact group, and activating our network quickly. So I was able to call a friend of mine, so one of our Regen advisors, Kim Wilson, who has an extensive network herself, and we were able to find a hard to find agricultural entomologist, because they're very keen on what bugs could do for them, and a number of elements really quickly. And they made their goal. That we will find out what the result is. But what that story illustrates is that, and part of where we want to develop the group aspect for collective benefit is using the platform together as a place to hold the group together, but also to be really opportunistic when you can about grant group opportunities, and activating this Regen advisor network so that we can get experts where we need it and when, and draw the resources for them. So it's a good example of this social and financial and digital infrastructure that the mutual's building. And also just that ability to be really quickly opportunistic so we can get money to the ground for farmers to do the actual work, but also long-term strategic about it. So the next story in the north is that long-term strategic, where we were given some time and money to be able to work out what would be a product for environmental markets that would suit us, the real land stewards. So we developed with Barappa people and farmers and ecologists and natural resource managers a hydrated biolink as a product. As a product concept. Okay, you've got a market. This is something that would work for us from the ground up. And so we looked at those multiple benefits, economic and environmental, and we've been slowly working that through. So we've had the opportunity. Kim's worked on this with me, as well as Wardy and the whole team, on how we could these biolinks could be designed by farmers so they're complementary to growing food and fibre. And they also have biodiversity benefits, as well as carbon credit accruing benefits. And so just at the back of the envelope, and as sort of an aggregated figure, looking at these cost benefit analysis across 6 at the moment, but also some others in the south, if we had 35 farms who had put strategic biolinks, so not one block, of around 30 hectares, and they had a sort of conservative carbon yield of around 12 carbon tonnes equivalent. And then in 5 years' time, it was a $75 ACCU that we were accessing, because we had a collective bargaining power in an aggregated transaction. That would mean about a $945,000 income for those farms. Now that's meaningful. That's meaningful in the 3rd year of drought. We're an irrigation district. We're commissioned, we feel, for the delivery of environmental water for environmental projects. And we want to see multi-purpose water production and environmental water, which is an underlying story, because again, it's all back to water. But over 20 years, this isn't very good maths, but if there was no CPI increase, and it was a static, it stayed at 75 over 20 years, it would be nearly $20 million that would be drawn, that would be drawn to the community. And a lot of what co-ops are formed for, and farmer coalitions, is to return wealth and water to our delta. So we see what the Regen Farmers Mutual is doing is really important for what's next when you're faced with some of the challenges we've had.
Wonderful, Jack. 2 awesome examples of a Murray Inland Delta. While we've got Jack, questions for Jack about challenges or opportunities that you see at the group scale? All right, I'm going to wake you up by presenting to you another Miro board because I don't think you've had enough Miro boards this evening, and we haven't allowed enough time in 2 hours to lecture at you. Here we go. Oh, no, that's Fridays. So thank you, Jack. You might have heard the concept, certainly we've talked about it, of the Landscape Impact Program. Now, what we've realized grown to understand is that having delivered 11 of these, there is different price points. So we've delivered 11 where Regen Farmers Mutual has customized the delivery. We've done the full facilitation. But we're starting to realize that we can work with existing organizations. So there might be young producer groups, existing industry groups, groups centered around a certain practice, organics, holistic, biodynamics, permaculture, groups centered around a certain structure like an RFS, a land care group, a regen cane group. And that those groups might choose to do DIY versions of our landscape impact program or white label versions where they not only have the content, but they also have access to our platform. There are others that are less sophisticated and less well. They can do a landscape impact program, as in they've got the facilitation skills, but they might not have the contacts, the introduction to the networks of investors, the network or the supply chains. We've got a pretty good track record of being able to bring the banks, the supply chains, the likes of philanthropic capital and government capital to the table. And then there are, not just us providing contacts and local facilitation, but also paying the working team and the events locally so that they can have a field trip, so that they can have catered co-design sessions, so that you can pay the working team to come up with what happens in a landscape impact program. So at the moment, we're, doing few of the expensive, sort of Elon Musk's original Tesla idea, but with the idea that we can certainly extend to lower price points and reduce the service levels that we do directly at the mutual and push those into local existing organizations. And as we head towards the low carbon landscape grant in New South Wales and into increasingly interesting times with sustainability reporting, getting more landscape impact programs out into the wild is pretty good idea. So what is a landscape impact program? Well, the core outcome is that over a course of, say, 14 weeks, you'll have 3 roles: the cat herder, the regen advisor, and the business development person, along with a pilot group of 10 farmers, attend 4 in-person sessions. And in between these in-person sessions, each role within the working team is to produce an outcome, a landscape action plan, what we're now calling a landscape investment priority plan, and a local economy action network. So a landscape action plan, it essentially involves breaking the farm and the landscape into common land management units. Now, these land management units will have interventions that we've already seen on our individual platform, and those interventions will have funding opportunities that come from these 4 pools of capital. By having the group, and particularly the group of farmers, identify what are the land management units, what are the interventions, and what are the ways that I can be incentivized or financially rewarded for undertaking those incentives, and matching that up with the lifestylers, the different government-owned land in the area, and the TOs, you have the opportunity of really talking to landscape investment priorities. what can be done on certain land management units, what are the projects and timeframes, and the value that can be achieved by those different land management units. Now, again, articulating what in your landscape, in your context, can be done enables those supply organizations to say, okay, well, I am engaged with the local community where I draw the food and fiber that is my scope 3 from. And that's really important for them to meet their SBTI and compliance requirements. The other thing to recognize is that it's not all about environmental markets and supply chains. There are grants from both philanthropic and local, state, and federal governments. There's local economy opportunities. So we'd all be aware land, they're not making more of it. There's increasing demands on land. So renewable energy, conservation and protection, you know, urban push, and food and fiber production are all fighting over the same pieces of land. Also, we've got a renewed vigor in this country to procure locally and to support transport, value adding, and market direct to consumer markets. There's the opportunity for new businesses to be formed off the back of supporting the Local Economy Action Network, which has as its mandate the ability to spread these interventions into new pools of capital, into more farmers in the landscape, and references the co-designed landscape action plan that was created during the Landscape Impact Program. Now, working with groups isn't as quick as working with individuals. You know, as an individual, you can probably gain with a regen advisor in 14 weeks, you could be into a carbon project yourself. Whereas working with a group, you're going to go through a process to uncover what are your priorities, what are the assets, what's the shared vision, and you're going to be articulating that. You ultimately want to present it as website, as collateral, as a name that identifies your landscape impact program. So we don't call the Murray Inland Delta north and south side of the Murray River between Barham and Swan Hill, because whilst that's an accurate name, it doesn't hit the heartstrings. We don't call Southern Tablelands the Southern Tablelands from, you know, Goulburn to Gundagai, Cowra to Braidwood. We call it the STAR Group, Southern Tablelands Agricultural Restoration Group. And this enables buyers to really empathise with the farmers and for us to have a narrative that helps us go from the pilot 10 to the next 10 and the next 10. Okay, we have finished a lot of the pointing at you on screen, and now is totally an opportunity to ask questions and have them fielded by James, Peter, Jack, Rowan, myself, all of our presenters today, who, by the way, did an amazing job. Any questions? And if you're a presenter with a question to another presenter, that's okay too. Go.
So, Wardy, I think it's great listening to all these ideas about how we can present something that's got some great biodiversity values. I was at a supplier meeting for our milk processors on Monday night, and I asked them, you know, how long before farmers will be rewarded for doing all these things. And his comment was really good. He said, look, we're still 5 years at least away from being able to do that, but we really want to learn. And I think that projects like ours at the HP are going to be great for us learning. But I think it probably also made me realise that in the end, it's a bit like making a widget. If no one wants to buy it, well, we haven't done our homework first. And so I think it'd be really important for us to listen to some of these people who are at the other end of the supply chain, you know, right back to the consumer and say, well, what do you really want us to be doing? Especially in these early days where a lot of the things we're doing are 5, 10, 15, 20-year return for our effort.
Came through again a fortnight ago at that turning support into value we need more commercial interactions between our farmers, farmer groups, and the end buyers. And, not to be too skeptical, but I think the end consumer wants everything cheap and convenient, etc. But as we're trying to price in previously externalized factors like environment and climate, not only does the end consumer, but the supply chain and farmers all need to recognize that has a complexity of incorporating previously externalized things. That means we've all got to go on a learning process. But if you make that learning process collaborative, hopefully fun, and engaging, it'll be far more successful, we think, doing it together than on our own. Don, yeah, Peter, you've got your hand.
Yeah, I used the physical hand because I couldn't figure out where the put hand up was in the Zoom thing, so I actually put my hand up anyway. um, just to comment on what Chris just said, gee, it'd be if it took 5 years before you got any incentives for this sort of stuff, we're all in real trouble. This has got to happen a lot quicker than that. That was all.
Andrea.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that through as well. And a couple of things are coming to mind. One is the storytelling that comes from the work that you're doing at the group level and obviously at the individual level, because storytelling is going to be such an important part of creating those connections. And then I think the other thing, Peter, sort of bouncing off what you just said, is storytelling, but with the data and the evidence to back it up. And that's what this platform now provides, which is fantastic. So can we push, can we push the storytelling plus the evidence that you've got and start pushing back on people like, or, supply chain operators like processors, for example, say, well, yeah, you're working on it. We've been working on it too. And here's what we've got. Like, when are you guys going to step up to the plate on these things? And there's also the backstory then of all the investment that you guys have made, Wardy and Rowan and your whole team on getting it to this point. So yeah, it's being ready. It's fantastic. Well done. Really, really impressive.
Thank you. Always nice to get good feedback. Any other questions, comments, challenges that came up for you when we were going through individual benefits? Were you like, yeah, is that a benefit or is that just a pain in the ass? Or were there other things that you heard when during the questions that might not have been answered? So, for example, Kim had a question on in our carbon emissions calculator. We don't have removals and sequestration in the calculator, but we have, for example, created space for that to be added into the future. And we're in the process of creating a beef insetting program that we hope will satisfy the conditions necessary to be added to sequestration. But yeah, a lot of this is still emerging.
Woody, if I can jump in here, it's Kim. Sorry, I can't put my camera on. The internet in my motel room is super dodgy, and you guys keep freezing on me. I just want to really, I guess, share a little bit about what's been happening here at the FarmLab Armidale conference today. It's been really, really interesting. We've had lots of lightning talks from various organisations, researchers, you name it. But the thing that's coming through really, really strongly is that there is this huge optimism around not just offsets and insets, but also the resetting. Guy Webb spoke very clearly about that today. But even before he had his talk, there was a lot of chat around, we can do so much in agriculture to really reset the bar on what's going on globally with emissions. And, as I said, it was prior to Guy talking. But some very, very interesting conversations, and I'm really interested to see what's going to come out of the megaton challenge that Sam and the team have put forward. But I'd really encourage RFM to be a part of that, because there's a lot of really great stuff happening out here.
I'm going to take that as we should eat our own medicine, right? We know that it's good for farmers individually to act as a collective. The mutual is a collective of a whole bunch of us, but we're not alone in the world. There's Farmers for Climate Action, there's Land Care. They've been doing this stewardship stuff for decades. I think the only thing that we're bringing, and
100%. And
Play Better is our landscape impact program, our digital platform, and hopefully soon the funding mechanism to finance groups and individual farmers into opportunities. So, yeah. Sorry, go, Kim.
You've got the likes of Angela Hammond. You've built an ecosystem for farmers. I think now you need to build on that ecosystem, an ecosystem of
I think your internet just got dodgy at a critical point, but I'm going to ask Sally Fields and Andrea to have a go. Sally, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, Woody,
industry, and really encourage that collaboration with Lorraine Gordon.
Sorry, go, Sally. I think that was latent.
Just wondering, I'm particularly interested. I'm based in Far North Queensland and have been working with a group of farmers on like a soil health / we've just done holistic grazing management and planning. So they're definitely were very new to the idea of a carbon project. What do you think is the time frame, give or take, on when the beef insetting will get up and running? And if you had a group of fully engaged farmers, but they're quite like a low, like they're not big landholders. Collectively, maybe they have a couple of thousand acres. Like, what would be your elevator pitch to get them interested in something like beef insetting?
Well, individually, the farmers would be interested in beef insetting if they know their number, right? And so the opportunity to come in for free and know your number and to recognize that your number is a problem for everybody you sell beef to, right? The abattoir, the processor, the Coles and Woolies who stock it, the McDonald's who put it in their burgers. They've all got to report on the Scope 3 emissions of their ingredients. And those ingredients ultimately flow back to the farm. We're now internalizing a cost that was previously externalized. The question becomes, who's going to pay that cost? Is it the individual farmers? Is it the supply chains or the end consumers? Unless we as farmers gather some of our negotiating power and market power and say, this is what in our context looks good, we're going to be, subject to the programs that other people come up with. And so I would encourage people to join beef insetting or in landscape impact programs or things that make sense for them with their neighbours, because on their own they get skinned and collectively they have a better a fighting chance. Yeah. I'd sell the stick because
Yeah.
you're going to sell them on the fact that it's a really good idea to now include emissions without reward.
That's it, Woody. When I'm speaking with some members and others, we use a sort of metaphor of this is the farmer's data castle. So this is where we have our actual emissions verified where they can, so that when supply chains decide that they've done an averaging model and satellite says, and it doesn't work in our favor and it's not it's not individually accurate, we're able to send the receipts, send it back. We've got the data. We've got our data castle.
Great expression, Jack. Thanks for your question, Sally. Andrea, you might be the last question and then we'll round out.
Oh, yeah, it's kind of following on from that in a way. Do you have an overarching data usage policy statement that you kind of wrap everything around? And second question is there sensitivity around that with the people that you're working with at all?
We have two key documents when it comes to data. The first is the Constitution of the Mutual, which makes data security, privacy, and security, privacy. Do you remember the third one, Rowan, off the top of your head? But it's literally written into our Constitution. And then we have our platform terms and conditions, which again reinforce to the farmer that they own their data and that they own the organization that manages their data on their behalf. So we kind of live and breathe it. We haven't yet got, say, the National Farmers Federation Farm Data Code assessment done, but we've definitely contributed to that movement and are fully supportive of the Farm Data Code as a means of demonstrating confidence to people about the data, their data, and how they use it and share it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, guys, you've done really well. I'll give last comment to Rowan. Rowan, anything to say?
Great job, Woody.
Oh, I mean,
No, I'm giving everyone a minute's head start.
yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in on the second Wednesday night for 2 hours in a fortnight. For those that are interested, please get along to the Beef Insetting program on Friday, 11 till 1. Until next time, thank you and have a good evening.